Is the government right to deport more foreign criminals? 027 862 2222. Give us a number. Let us know what you think about this. Now, just to be clear what this is about today, the government has introduced new plans to deport foreign criminals immediately on conviction and sentencing, rather than serving part of their sentence here. So just to be clear, it's not on their conviction, it's when they are actually sentenced. Victims Minister Alex Davies-Jones said this was good for British taxpayers. Just
will be done, as is always done regarding deportations. We're just doing this quicker. These criminals would have been deported anyway. They would have been done at 50% of their sentence. We think that's wrong, that the taxpayer is funding any of that at all. They should be deported immediately, and we're bringing that forward, and we are sending them back as they would have been done anyway.
Now, under the new proposals, offenders would no longer serve even 30% of their term behind bars. Just to be clear, that's what happens now. You get sentenced, and at 30%, it is, at that point, they can be sent back to their country of origin. You have to do 30% here. That is what is being suggested by the government to be changed. And that happens at the moment, unless being given a life sentence for terrorism or murder. So those don't count. Is there a right to deport more foreign criminals to reduce our prison population and save money? Or should they be made to serve some of their sentence here? Now, Reem, foreign national offenders make up about 12% of the prison population, and each prison place costs taxpayers about the cost of sending some to Eton, about $54,000 a year. Do you support this move?
I do. I think that if you are a foreign criminal and you've committed a crime, British taxpayers should not be footing the bill for you to sit in prison. Now, I do understand the arguments. I think that fundamentally this is about people that have come to this country, that have taken advantage of the goodwill of the British people and instead taken advantage of that and committed egregious crimes. Now, part of the problem I have potentially with this policy is that it maybe doesn't go far enough, because there are some people that will exploit legal loopholes in order for them to not get out of prison. Now, I will give one example. Yep. Kari Ralph and Adil Khan, they were part of the grooming gangs and they sexually assaulted about 47 girls, British girls. They are now out of prison, roaming free, because they ripped up their Pakistani passports and said, no, I don't want to go back there, and Pakistan are refusing to take them back.
Well, there's another legal loophole. Henry, critics warn this move bypasses a number of processes and challenges human rights protections, especially Article 8 of the European Convention, which is about the protection of family life. In other words, you may not have a full passport, let's say, but you could even have a conditional right to remain. Mm-hmm. You commit a criminal offence, could be a burglary, and you're sent home despite having a family.
Yeah, and it could very well be that you have been a taxpayer yourself. You might have been a law-abiding taxpayer, but you've maintained your foreign nationality, or you haven't been able to get a British passport, for, say, 30 years. That's not the only problem I have with it. There's another one. I mean, we're talking about very, very serious offenders, life offenders being deported at the end of their sentence. But what about if you've committed a rape or a robbery and you get deported immediately on sentence? So you haven't served proper time here in this country. You've committed an offence in this country. You should serve at least some of your time.
Well, foreign offenders make up around 12% of the prison population, 12%. And as you know, it's almost impossible now to find prison places. I have colleagues who are judges. We know that Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, is not sending people to prison or suggesting that they shouldn't, even for serious offences. Anyway. As of January 2024, there were around 10,400 foreign nationals in the prison system. In 2023, just under 4,000 foreign offenders were removed from the UK. Before we come on to Nick in Devon, one of the issues here is that if you're a victim of a crime, you want to make sure that the punishment fits the crime. And to be clear, the proposals don't apply to life sentences, murder and terrorism. But if you're a victim of sexual violence, if you're a victim of burglary, whatever it is, the worry is you might be sent back straight away to your country of origin, where they have even less prison stock available, prison spaces available, and you find yourself out in a week. What justice is that?
Well, exactly. And I don't know what the details of the arrangements might be. So if somebody from a particular country was deported immediately on sentence, would they be obliged under this arrangement, the country that receiving them, to keep them in prison for a period of time? Would we pay for that? Because I suspect without that payment being made, they would not serve a day.
And different countries have a very different view about the prison system. And what I mean by that is, A, where there are places, B, sorry, lawyers, whether or not those meet the basic standards of human rights. Again, it's going to be a very, very difficult policy to push through.
Should have thought about that before they committed a crime.
Well, I think a lot of people at home might agree with you, but the Home Office has also added 15 countries to its Deport Now, Appeal Later scheme, meaning more foreign criminals can be sent back to their home countries before they appeal against the decision, which is a very interesting one. You heard what Reem has to say. It doesn't matter what the prison conditions are like back in your home country or country of origin. You should have thought about that before you committed the crime. Do you agree with her? Nick in Devon.
Oh, hi, Rob and panel.
Hi,
Morning. Well, wouldn't it be lovely if, everything was so black and white that we could sort of make decisions like this easily? But unfortunately, it isn't black and white, as I think you've all alluded to there with your, previous sort of comments about it. Look, there's over 200 countries in the world. They're all individual. They're all different. They all have different ideas. That's one thing. You can't just dump people in these countries. You've got to sort of have the agreement of their governments that they're going to be able to do. That's the first thing. And the other thing I think you really need to sort of think hard about is that, in fact, this is a two-way street. It's not one way. What's going to happen to the British people in foreign prisons that have actually committed crimes?
Well, just to be clear,
bring them over here.
We do. No, actually, Nick, you should be aware, we do that already. Back in my practicing days, had a number of clients. In fact, in one instance, served his time abroad, and they'd inadequately counted the days that he'd served. So he ended up spending more time in a UK prison, having committed his offence, I think, in Spain. That does happen. We do already do that. The question is, Kathy, you're in Cheshire. Thanks for calling, Nick. Look, it's about, if you commit an offence in this country, you have a victim here. You want to be confident and reliably know that the person is going to spend time in prison, paying society back for what they've done to you. If you get sent back to another country, regardless of the horrendous circumstances you find yourself in prison, what if the other thing happens and you're just released straight away? What sort of punishment is that, Kathy?
Well, I think the cornerstone of all this is to get people out, get criminals out before they put deep roots down in this country. And if you've come here and you behave badly, even if it's something like petty shoplifting, if it's not just for once, but if it's multiple occasions, pickpocketing, shoplifting, anything like that, you could just be deported, not sent to prison at all in this country. And when they go back home, if they don't go do any prison time in their own country, that's not our problem.
Kathy, you really make a powerful point there, and I suspect there's many people out there that agree with you. The contract is, if you come to this country lawfully, but you're not yet a citizen, the social contract, the deal is you don't commit a criminal offence. And if you do,
you're out.
You are no longer going to be eligible for citizenship, and we shouldn't have to wait and pay £54,000 a year for you to be in prison. I suspect, Kathy, in Cheshire, there's many people who agree with that. Rob in Hampshire, do you? Rob?
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, I've worked all over the world.
Right.
And if you come to Britain and you want to live in Britain, then you abide by the British rules. If you go around pickpocketing, thieving, etc., then we don't want you.
What about the more serious offence? I think people would agree with that, and it's very difficult. Just to be clear, because of the Human Rights Act and a number of other, practical legislation and all that sort of thing, it's very, very difficult to deport somebody.
Especially when they put down roots with a family.
Especially.
And that's why we have to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, so we can ensure we can set our own rules and actually say if somebody commits an egregious crime in this country, if you commit a rape or a sexual assault in this country, you are deported to your homeland. You should not be paid for by British taxpayers.
But Reem, this legislation is being proposed while we are still a member of the European Convention.
Exactly, which is why we're going to leave it. Well, we might see some conflict. That's the problem, right? With the Rwanda scheme, which I wasn't in support of, but the Rwanda scheme didn't work, because even though legally it worked in this country, it violated the ECHR, and it meant that you could appeal to European courts and delay, and it meant that nobody was deported.
Well, Rwanda was declared a safe country. We still couldn't get planes off the ground. So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of people out there that will agree with the caller saying when it comes to a buffet of offences that aren't necessarily sexual violence, but we're talking about burglaries, pickpockets, people are phoning in, type of a crime that interferes with the chemistry of communities, to say the very least, right, with social cohesion. If you commit an offence like this, why are we paying for probation, or more importantly, for a prison place, which we can't ill afford, £54,000 a year, rather than saying, look, you're going to be sentenced and you're on the first plane back to whatever your country of origin. Why should we pay for it?
If it's somebody, as our colleague described, I've forgotten her name, was it Kathy or something, who has come over from, I don't know, Portugal or whichever, I don't know why I said Portugal, there's a lot of guys in my area, and you haven't put down roots and you've just come here to rob, to thieve, etc., and, the courts have found you guilty, then, in those circumstances, I wouldn't have a problem with, quotes, summary justice. But where it's somebody who has lived here, worked here, put down roots, been a taxpayer, and where there's a capacity for rehabilitation, and it's not one of these
They
extremely...
should have thought about that before.
But people don't work like that.
I'm
that doesn't
sorry,
happen.
but you
They're
have
human
no
beings.
right. If you've come to this country...
What about if you're born here in this country and you've committed crimes? Do we lock you up and throw away the key?
Right,
We don't.
we're talking about foreign criminals here. We're not
but there's
talking
still a
about British
contract.
people. We're talking about people that have come to this country that are not British, that are not born here, people that have come to this country and have committed a crime. I don't care if you have family here. You should have thought about that before you committed the crime.
What do you mean? You seem to have very little trust. And listen, I suspect there's a number of people out there who feel exactly the same way, with the idea that what if you're deported to a country where the prison conditions, I dealt with a case like this myself on behalf of a defendant, I must confess, where the prison conditions were so bad that we successfully argued that was a breach of this person's Article 3 rights, the prohibitions against torture, or where they might have had a family here, Article 8 rights of the European Convention. You say, as far as you're concerned, that don't matter.
Like, you should have thought about that before you committed the crime. Like, what about the victims in this country that have been the victim of those particular crimes, especially when it is of violent nature? Now, when it comes to things like petty crimes, I'm sorry, but every other country in the world, I'm over-exaggerating, but most countries in the world, if you are there on a visa and you are foreign to that country and you commit a crime, you are deported. So why are we any different?
Well, Nikki, you're up from where we are in Derbyshire. Do you agree with Reem? The deal is very simple. If you're here on a pass and you commit a criminal offence, what are we doing sending you to our prisons at the taxpayers' expense? You should immediately be removed. You're out.
Exactly. 110% that you should be out. As soon as you committed that crime and you've been made guilty for that crime, that you should be out of this country.
Well, but Nikki, let me ask you the question, if you don't mind. What happens? I mean, I don't know, and I hope you've never been a victim of crime, but no doubt we all know people who have. How would your friend or whoever, a loved one, feel if that person was immediately deported back to that country of origin and served no time in prison at all? They went back and they were immediately released. In other words, apart from going back to where they came from, so to speak, they didn't have any punishment. Would you be okay with that?
Not really. If you've done the crime, you should pay for it.
Right, but given some, not all, because that's not always the case, but given some countries receiving prisoners back might, for example, reduce the sentence to perhaps a few days when the person is supposed to be serving 3, 4, 5 years, that might create a problem, mightn't it, Nikki?
Yes, I agree with that. But the money should be spent elsewhere rather than paying for people that are, how can I say it, taking advantage of the system.
And do you mind, we've got Reem here, who said, look, I don't care what the prison conditions are like in the country of origin you came from. You committed a crime, that's the risk that you took. A lot of people saying Reem is absolutely right about that.
Yes, she is, 100%. If you've committed a crime, like in any other country, if you commit a crime and you're on a visa, you'd be deported. So why shouldn't it happen here?
You know, yet more challenge, Henry, to the idea of the Human Rights Act not meeting what the public want. And you know, in a democratic society, people are saying, look, we want these people out, and the lawyers and this law are stopping it.
We're a democratic society, but we're also a civilized society. We consider ourselves to be the best, most humane country in the world. We used to hang people in this country. We used to flog people in this country. We used to draw and quarter them in this country. And then we saw the light. And I want us to get better and more thoughtful.
Maybe if
and
we
take
had
the long
some of
view.
those punishments, some of these
there you go.
Because
Even in a democratic country, people could bring back hanging. In this country, they would.
Well, let's just pause there and reflect. Thanks, Nikki, and everybody calling in on that one. Later, it's the papers and everything else. Find out what genre of music cows. Yes, mooing cows apparently love to listen to. But after the break, we're asking, should men stop taking their tops off? Now, we know it's hot, but should men going topless be confined to the beach instead of the high street? 0207 862 2222. That's the number you need, and we'll see you very, very shortly.